I was standing in the Tim Hortons on the edge of Kingston, holding my double-double in both hands, when I called my brother to ask if Mom wanted red or white wine. He didn't answer right away. "The party was last night," he finally said. The coffee was burning my palms through the paper cup. I didn't move. "What do you mean, last night?" A long breath came through the phone. "Sabrina changed the date. She sent out the new information weeks ago." The woman behind me asked if I was done at the counter. I stepped aside without looking at her. Around me, the late afternoon crowd shuffled in and out, people in winter coats unwrapping sandwiches, checking their phones, carrying on completely as normal. The highway noise was still in my ears from the drive. I had just passed Kingston. 2 more hours to Toronto, maybe. I had been thinking about this drive all week. "Nobody told me," I said. "She said she'd handled it," he replied. "She told me herself she'd contacted everyone on the list." I asked who had been there. He gave me names: my aunt, my cousin Rachel, our dad, the neighbors who had known our mother since we were kids. Everyone had brought something. Sabrina had ordered a custom cake from the bakery near their house in Etobicoke, the one Mom always mentioned wanting to try. Mom's 60th birthday. I had been thinking about it for months. I got back in my car and sat without starting the engine. The parking lot was gray and wet. A truck idled in the space beside me, exhaust curling up into the cold November air. I set the coffee in the cup holder and opened my messages. I scrolled back through everything: texts, missed calls, voicemail. I searched my email for anything from Sabrina. I checked the family group chat, the one we had used for years. The last message was from 2 weeks ago, my dad sharing a photo of a cardinal on his bird feeder. Nothing about a change of date. I stayed in that parking lot longer than I should have. Cars came and went. The coffee went cold. Then I started the car and pulled back onto the 401. By the time I crossed into Scarborough, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to call Sabrina yet. I've known her long enough to understand that going to her without the full picture just gives her room to reshape things. She's good at that, turning a conversation about her choices into a question about yours. I called my aunt first, once I was parked outside my apartment building. "Oh, sweetheart," she said. "We all thought you knew." She had assumed my brother had called me directly. He had assumed Sabrina told me. My aunt had seen Sabrina sending messages in the days before the party and hadn't thought to verify anything. I asked what reason Sabrina had given for my absence. A pause. "She said you had a work commitment, a conference in Montreal that ran over the weekend." I did have a work trip to Montreal. That part was technically true. It was a Thursday and Friday trip. I had been home by Saturday afternoon with the full evening free, which was exactly when the party had originally been scheduled. But Sabrina moved it to Friday evening, when I was still in Montreal. I called my cousin Rachel next. She had heard something different. Sabrina had told her I was stuck at a delayed flight and couldn't make it back in time. Rachel had felt sorry for me. She assumed I must have been devastated. I thanked her and told her I would explain more later. After those 2 calls, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote everything down. 2 people, 2 different explanations, neither of them true. The next morning I called my dad. He was quieter than usual when I told him I hadn't been informed about the date change. He said Sabrina had made clear, while organizing everything, that she had personally been in contact with everyone who needed to know. "Did you ask her specifically whether she had reached me?" I said. A pause, he admitted. I trusted that she had. I asked what reason he had been given for why I wasn't there. He thought for a moment. "She said you were exhausted from the trip, that you'd called her to say you needed the weekend to recover, and you'd celebrate with your mother separately." I never made that call. That was 3 different stories, 3 people, 3 explanations, none of them the same. Over the following days I kept making calls. My cousin on my mother's side had been told I was coming down with something, and didn't want to risk getting anyone sick. A family friend who had known us since I was in elementary school said Sabrina mentioned I had a prior obligation that couldn't be moved. My mom's neighbor who had been at the party said she'd heard I was dealing with something personal and hadn't felt up to coming. I wrote each one down. By the end of the week I had 7 different explanations. Some were about work, some about health. One was vague enough to mean almost anything. What none of them had in common was the truth. I went through my phone records from the weeks before the party. Sabrina's name appeared twice. One call, about 3 weeks out, she had asked whether I wanted to contribute to a group gift for Mom, and I said yes. and we exchanged a few texts about what to chip in. One text a week later about something else entirely, a family dinner in January. There was nothing about a date change, no missed call, no message, nothing forwarded from any planning group I hadn't been added to. I searched my phone for a group chat connected to the birthday. Nothing came up. I called Rachel again and asked if there was one. Yeah, she said, Sabrina made one for people helping set up. What's it called? She told me. I searched nothing. Can you read me the names of who's in it? I asked. She went through the list, my brother, my aunt, a few cousins, the neighbor from down the street. My name wasn't there. Wait, Rachel said quietly, you're not in it. I know. A long silence. How did none of us notice that? That's what I'm trying to work out. I closed the notebook and looked at the list I'd made. No contact from Sabrina in the lead up to the party. No record of being added to the planning group. 7 different explanations circulating through the family, each one tailored just enough to sound plausible on its own. Together, they couldn't all be true, not even close. I still didn't know why. But I was starting to understand where the answer was going to come from. I waited until the following weekend to go to my parents' house. Mom opened the door before I knocked and held me for a long moment in the doorway. She smelled like the fabric softener she has used my whole life. I didn't bring up the party right away. We had tea in the kitchen. The birthday decorations had mostly come down, but a few cards were still propped along the windowsill. A banner sat folded on the counter. I recognized the bakery box in the recycling bag by the door. After a while, I asked her gently who had organized everything. Sabrina offered back in September, she said. I was so grateful. You know I don't love being the center of attention. She paused. I assumed she'd kept you in the loop. I told her I hadn't received anything. Her face went still. Nothing at all? No messages, no calls, nothing. She set her mug down slowly. She told your brother she'd handled it. He trusted her completely. I nodded. I already knew that part. Before I left, I helped Mom go through some boxes in the hall closet. She had been meaning to sort through things for months. While I was clearing a shelf, I found a notepad tucked between 2 shoe boxes. The top pages were old grocery lists, but a few pages in I found something else. A page headed Mom's 60th guest list. Names ran down in 2 columns, each with a small checkbox beside it. I scanned slowly. Near the bottom of the second column, I found my name. Beside it, in red pen, not attending, confirmed with her directly. I photographed the page from 3 different angles. Then I put the notepad back exactly where I had found it, between the same 2 shoeboxes, at the same angle. Driving home, I kept coming back to those 5 words. Confirmed with her directly. That wasn't a note about a scheduling conflict. It wasn't a question or a reminder to follow up. It was written as a completed fact. A conversation that had apparently already happened between 2 people, settled and done. Except only one of those people had been there to settle it. I texted Sabrina that evening. Not about the party. I kept it light, said I'd been meaning to catch up, asked if she wanted to get coffee that week. She replied within the hour. Thursday worked, she said. We met at a cafe near her office in Mississauga. She ordered a latte and talked about the kids' hockey schedule for the first few minutes. I let her. Then I placed my phone on the table, with the photograph open. She stopped mid-sentence. I found this at Mom's, I said. She looked at the screen. Her expression didn't go angry. It went careful. That's the thing about Sabrina, she doesn't get flustered. She recalibrates. I was going to tell you. You wrote that you confirmed with me directly, I said. We never had that conversation. I thought I had more time to work it out. Work what out? She wrapped both hands around her mug. You and I have had tension for years. You know that. I thought if you came, it would surface on your mother's night. I was trying to protect her evening. I kept my voice even, so you decided I shouldn't be there. I thought it would make things easier. For who? She didn't answer. Did you tell my dad that I called you to say I was too tired to come? A pause. I was trying to give people something that made sense. You gave 7 different explanations. Nobody got the same story. She looked out the window. A streetcar rolled past on the road outside. A few seconds went by. I know, she said quietly. I didn't think people would compare notes. I picked up my phone and turned the screen off. You didn't make one mistake, Sabrina. You made a plan, and then you made sure everyone believed my absence was my own choice. She was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, she said she was sorry. I told her I believed she meant it. I also told her I needed her to understand exactly what had happened. The issue wasn't just that I'd missed the party. The issue was that she had spoken for me, to my entire family, and made certain no one thought to check. That evening, I called my brother. I wasn't going to keep this quiet. He deserved to know, and so did my parents. I walked him through everything in order. The photograph of the guest list, the screenshots showing I had never been added to the planning group, the call records showing no contact from Sabrina in the weeks before, and the 7 different explanations that couldn't possibly all be true. He was silent for a long time after I finished. She told me she had spoken to you, he said. She was specific. She said you understood the change and you were going to make other plans to celebrate with Mom. She never spoke to me about any of this. Another silence. Then, I should have called you myself. That sentence stayed with me, not just from him, from everyone, as it turned out. My brother told our parents that weekend. I came over and brought the photograph. Mom sat at the kitchen table and looked at it for a long time without speaking. Dad stood by the counter with his arms crossed. When I showed them the call records alongside the guest list, he set down his coffee and walked to the window. I trusted that she had handled it, he said. You all did, I told him. That's not a criticism, it's just what happened. My aunt called me that afternoon. She had already spoken to my brother. She was upset in the quiet way she gets. Not loud, just still. She apologized for not reaching out to me herself when she noticed I wasn't at the party. My cousin Rachel sent a text that just said, I'm so sorry, I should have asked you directly. Over the following week, the family slowly began comparing notes. Not because I pushed anyone, but once 2 or 3 people started talking, the pieces fell together quickly. Someone mentioned the conference story. Someone else had heard the cold. Another had been told about an undisclosed personal issue. The inconsistencies couldn't be ignored once they were out in the open. Mom called me one evening near the end of November. I keep thinking about how I never once wondered why you weren't there, she said. I trusted what I was told. I should have called you myself the moment I realized you weren't responding to anything. You would have, if you'd had reason to doubt it, I said. That's exactly it, she replied. I didn't have reason to doubt it, because someone I trusted had already given me the answer. I never thought to go around her. We stayed on the phone for another half hour, talking about other things, her plans for a garden in spring, a book she'd been reading, my work. But I could tell something had shifted. Not just in how she understood what had happened, but in how she was thinking about the way information had always moved through our family. The December gathering at my parents' house was smaller than usual. Nobody made it a big occasion.
After dinner,
When everyone had moved to the living room with their tea, I brought out the folder I had put together. The photograph of the guest list, the screenshots showing I had never been added to the planning group, the call logs. I didn't present it as an accusation. I just laid it on the coffee table. I want to say something, I started. Missing Mom's birthday hurt, but what bothers me more is how easily everyone accepted a version of events without checking with me directly. I looked around the room, not because any of you are careless, but because we've developed a habit, over a long time, of letting one person manage the whole conversation. And when that person has their own reasons for doing it, none of us have any way of knowing. My dad looked at his hands. My brother nodded slowly. Sabrina was there too. She had offered to come, which I thought took something. She sat near the edge of the room and said very little until the end. When she spoke, she said, "What I did was wrong. I told myself I was trying to protect the evening, but that wasn't really the reason. I think most of you can see that." She looked at me. "You had every right to be there. It was your mother's 60th birthday, and I had no right to make that decision." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was more honest than I'd expected. What surprised me more was what came after. My aunt mentioned a time, years earlier, when she had been left out of a family decision, because the information had passed through someone else first. My cousin brought up something that had happened at my grandmother's retirement party, something we had all vaguely registered at the time, but never addressed. Old frustrations surfaced, carefully, without anyone pointing too hard in any one direction. It turned out this was not entirely new territory. We had simply never named it before. By the time we finished cleaning up, the conversation had shifted. It was no longer only about what Sabrina had done. It was about how we, all of us, had allowed it to happen. Not to pile blame, but because that was the only version of the conversation that might actually change something going forward. Mom's actual birthday fell on a Tuesday in January. Nothing elaborate, just the four of us at the kitchen table, with takeout from the Thai place she likes on the Danforth and a rum cake my dad had picked up from the neighborhood bakery. She had specifically asked for nothing fussy. I drove across the city in a light snowstorm to get there. She opened the door in her dressing gown and laughed when she saw me on the step. "You didn't have to come in this weather." "I was invited," I said. She pulled me inside and took my coat, still laughing. We ate at the kitchen table with the radio on low. At some point my brother set down his fork and said, very quietly, that he was sorry. Not for the first time, but somehow it landed differently at a small table in January than it had in a crowded living room in December. I told him what I had told everyone else. The apology I needed was a changed habit, not a repeated statement. He nodded. I think he understood what I meant. By the time spring came, I noticed things had shifted in ways that were small enough to miss if you weren't looking for them. When there was something to organize, people sent messages directly, instead of routing them through whoever was handling logistics that month. When plans changed, someone updated the whole group instead of selecting who needed to know. My mom started calling me herself. My aunt asked me directly about things she used to assume someone else had already relayed. None of it was dramatic, it was just different. The following November, when Mom's birthday came around again, my brother called me himself to ask about timing. My dad sent a message with the restaurant name and address, and asked whether I was still planning to bring dessert. My aunt texted the week before, to check whether there was anything on the menu I couldn't eat. On the day itself, I stopped at the bakery near my apartment, the Portuguese place with the custard tarts Mom had tried exactly once, 2 years ago, and mentioned at least a dozen times since. I picked up a box and drove to the restaurant in Leslieville through light snow, which felt like the right kind of weather for the occasion. My brother was outside when I pulled up. He held the door open. "Right on time," he said. Mom was already at the table. She reached up and held my face in both hands for a moment, the way she has done since I was small. I have never quite figured out what it means, only that it means something. I set the tarts beside the other desserts and took my seat. Nobody had assumed where I would be. Nobody had spoken for me. If anyone had a question about my plans, they had asked me. Looking around the table, Mom at 61, Dad squinting at the menu without his glasses, my brother showing my aunt something on his phone, Sabrina helping her youngest cut her food. I thought about how simple it was, in the end. Just ask. Not the first time. The first time had taken all of this. A missed party, months of quietly gathered evidence, an uncomfortable December dinner, a long and honest conversation that had started with a guest list I wasn't supposed to find. It had taken what it took, and here we were, on the other side of it. The tarts were good, Mom said so twice, which with her is high praise. I drove home later that night through the first real snow of the season, the city quiet and orange-lit the way it gets after a heavy fall. I thought about standing in that Tim Hortons parking lot 13 months earlier. Coffee going cold in my hands, trying to understand how a party I had been looking forward to for months had already ended without me. It is strange what something like that teaches you. It was not really about one birthday. It was about what happens when a family gets comfortable letting one person carry the whole conversation, and how much damage a single careful lie can do when everyone already trusts the person telling it. I don't think about Sabrina the way I used to. What she did was deliberate, and it took a long time to make peace with that. But the thing I keep returning to is not her. It is the moment my aunt said I thought someone had told you. My dad saying I trusted that she had. My mom saying, I never once wondered why you weren't there. Those moments did not belong to Sabrina. They belonged to all of us. And so did fixing them.